So my name is Dr. Danielle Lord. I am your hostess along with Charity, who's our member coordinator, and she just does a great job of getting folks interested in the chamber and what we do for businesses in Bonnie Lake. So I don't know how much I've set these sessions up in the past, or if you're joining for the first time, you might not know, but we started this series about 1.5 years ago as an intentional way to bring some leadership development, some business development, management development to small business owners who oftentimes get into business because we have a passion for what we do, we're good at it, and someone in the organization has not listened to us. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. That's why we started this series, and we're happy to have you participating wherever you're at today, and hopefully we'll be welcoming some other guests in as well. So I have to start off. So I'll just pause for a second here and say our topic today is around retention. And this is really all about getting folks to stay with you, but it's also about getting the right folks to stay with you. Because if you do not have a good culture, you're not going to attract the right people. And you can retain bad people, poor employees, for a long time, and they're not going to be there to help you be successful. So with that, we'll go ahead and just dive in. I might be keeping an eye to see if we get any more participants, and Charity, jump in with questions. I actually do my best when I have questions.
All right,
So,
I will.
yeah,
Thank you.
dive in, and I'm feeling it's super warm in my office where I'm at with my client, and so if I'm fanning myself every now and then, it's because I'm feeling a little warm. So
no worries.
All right, so your top talent, they want to come to you and do their best work. I really am a firm believer in that. And there are things that happen along the way where people get tired and frustrated, and they say, I no longer want to do my best. In my industry, actually more broadly in business right now, it's called quiet quitting. I don't like that term. I don't think it does business owners a real service in terms of what's actually happening, but that's probably another larger conversation for another day around this specific topic. But your employees come to you, they want to do their best for you. I always like to tell leaders that no one says, I can't wait to fail on their first day. It's just not something that we experience. So something happens along the way. And sometimes those are repeated incidents of some things that happen along the way that employees just go, I've had enough. And research has shown that if there is not somewhere for them to go, there's not someone close by, maybe they're too vested with their pension or their 401k. There's a variety of reasons why we say they have high exit costs. But if they can't or don't believe they can afford to leave, they'll stay with you, and they will do damage along the way. And, we can't. Somebody said a couple of weeks ago, and I said, it's not quiet quitting, it's actually sabotage. And somebody said, well, aren't you afraid that the employees are going to get the brunt of the frustration of the owners when you say it's sabotage? It's like, well, sometimes we have to be that bold and blunt with these statements, because I think it's really easy to just kind of set these things aside and say, it's just quiet quitting. I shouldn't be concerned about it. But if they're not helping you meet your strategic goals, then it's just, they're not helping you with your business, and they're turning customers away. They're turning product, money, all kinds of things away. And ultimately, when employees come into the organization, they expect to come into an organization that's going to be supportive of them. This has got to be a two-way street. This isn't the feudal era where it's I'm the manorial lord and I'm going to kick you off my property if things aren't going well. And unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at right now in business, from where I see it and where I sit. And this isn't based on, just Danielle's opinion. This is 32 years of doing this work. So all right, I'll stop with the diatribe here, and we'll get into what really is at the heart of retention. And it's about culture. And, you know, we throw that word out a lot, culture, culture, culture. We really don't oftentimes understand what it means. We tend to kind of intuitively know it as the environment in which your employees are working. And we tend to think of it as the soft side of the environment. So effective communication, trust, psychological safety, interpersonal relationships. But there's actually quite a bit more to it than just that. And so what I'm going to do in this presentation today is kind of walk through these 8 elements of culture and provide you with some additional tips and tricks that you might be able to use as a takeaway if you're interested. So yeah, go ahead, Charity.
No, this is really the kind of content that employers need, and really no matter what the size of the organization, right? Because
yeah, size does not matter. Tenure, age does, well, I would say tenure and age does matter a little bit when we get to point number 3. But, you know, these are really important things, and we often overlook these elements of culture. And we oftentimes can't define it. But yeah, I always like to remind employers that, you know, your employees are either your greatest asset or your greatest liability. And this is, so the work that we do is just as sexy as marketing and just as functional as accounting. And we actually bridge the gap.
It's critical, right? It's critical work for sure.
Yeah, it's all about the people.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So just very quickly, there are 8 elements of culture, and that's purpose and goals, role clarity, clearly identified processes, team relationships, organizational relationships, and those are 2 different sets of relations, problem solving, passion and commitment, and organizational knowledge. Now I do have assessments for both of these, and I have a quick one-page assessment that you can do if you're curious about either one of these, and then I do have a longer assessment, but I'll email Charity the assessment, and you can add it into a link into the description, Charity, if folks are interested in this. So okay, let's dive into this. So I do have some things highlighted in my nice little brand salmon color here. So it's you know, it's a lovely color. It's also a color of the Pacific Northwest. And if you're ever curious about color psychology, it is the combination of pink, which is soft, which is what leadership is really all about, and orange, which is kind of a call to action. So it's my little hint on color psychology there. So
I love it.
So that's why I have that's why salmon is my color. So
nice.
All right, a quick look at purpose and goals. I am surprised oftentimes when organizations don't have their mission posted. They have employees or team members, as I like to call them, who don't know what it is that they're working towards, so they don't understand what the broader mission is. And so I know this seems kind of rudimentary, but it is kind of foundational, which is why it's number 1. But in addition to the mission and the vision and knowing what those are and having that clear line of sight, or as your North Star, if you will, making sure that your team members know what the strategic goals are is really, really crucial to the success of your business. And I was very surprised. Several years ago, I was working with a management team at a biomedical tech group doing some consulting work there. And I was really shocked that this was a group of managers who did not know what the strategic goals were. And I asked them, I said, well, where are they? Why don't you know? How come you don't have cascading goals? And they said, well, it's kind of under lock and key. And you've got to be one of the 3 top executives who knows the secret super squirrel handshake. And I thought, oh, this is so wrong.
Yes, you're doing it wrong, friends.
You've got a lot more work to do here. So this strategic plan should not be a secret. It should be out and about and socialized and publicized as much as you can. So practical tip, make sure your team has access to it, knows what the strategic plan is. And if you want to go a step further and you're saying, okay, that's great, I do this already, I do have some advanced tips as well. So if you're already doing this and you want an advanced tip, cascading goals are the way to go. And that means that everybody, literally everybody, is working towards the same goals. So everyone, I might not be at a particular level, I might not be working towards this goal way up here at the top, but I'm working on a tactic or something that supports my manager, who's supporting their manager, who's supporting their manager to get to this big goal at the top. So that's what we mean when we say cascaded goals.
Huh.
I'll just pause here, Charity, and see if you have any thoughts or things you'd like to add.
No, I mean, I like this idea of a foundation and then being able to take it to the next level with additional, you know, extrapolation there. It's great that you're offering these advanced tips too. Thank you.
All right. So role clarity is number 2. And the research consistently shows that if you do not have role clarity, you do not have a happy employee. And role clarity or role stress is kind of an umbrella term. It covers a lot of different things kind of that all relate to your role. So there's role uncertainty, there's role ambiguity, there's role conflict, there's all different ways that this stress can show up as it relates to the work that you're doing in your role. Again, the research shows that this is one of the #1 contributors to a disengaged group of employees. And it can be very, very stressful. When you've got 2 or 3 different people giving you 2 or 3 different sets of direction, it's like, what is it that I'm supposed to do? Exactly. In addition to that, we have some pretty trigger happy managers who are always about, got to hold them accountable. Where's the accountability around this? It's like, well, where was your accountability in making sure that they knew exactly what they were?
She said it.
Right. I mean, that's the bigger issue and the bigger question right there is you as a manager need to make sure that your team member knows exactly what it is that they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
I've added to this, trying to expand the umbrella term and the definition. I've created a term called role compression. And that means from the way I've outlined this is the manager is uncertain as to work that they're supposed to be doing in their manager role. And so what do we do when we get stressed, tired, frustrated, anxious, we're uncertain ourselves? We revert back to what we know. And so it means that now the manager's doing the work that the team members are supposed to be doing. And since the team members now don't have any work to do, they're either doing nothing, which is costing your organization a lot of money and lost time and resources. You now have a very stressed manager and you have very frustrated employees because they can't come to the organization to do what they wanted to do. So practical tip, make sure your team members are getting their work instructions from one person, and that should be a direct line of a reporting relationship. So if I report to Charity, Charity should be the one giving me direction. If I get direction from somebody else, I need to have the opportunity to come back to Charity and say, what is it that you want me to be doing? With you being able to then say, yeah, ditch that work. This is what I need you to be focused on. So in addition to that, one-to-one meetings are critical. And I oftentimes see a lot of managers canceling their one-to-one meetings because they have too many other operational needs. And that just leaves the employees really, really frustrated at the end of the day. So advanced tip, which is to complete an end-to-end process map of all your work, which actually leads us into number 3, which is making sure that you have clearly defined processes. Now, this is where I say tenure matters. You can define these processes at any given point in time, but if you're a 10-year-old company or a 100-year-old company, this is going to be a much larger and costly endeavor than if you did this when your company was a year old. So what we talk about with end-to-end processes is, what do I do from the time I come to work and the time I complete a particular process? And it gives very clear specified tasks that each role is supposed to be doing and the interaction of those tasks. So the best example of this is McDonald's uses this as a process. So if I leave here, Tacoma, Washington, and stop at McDonald's on my way out of town and get a quarter pounder, the quarter pounder I'm going to get when I get all the way to the East Coast is going to be the exact same quality, because there's a very clearly defined process and everybody knows exactly what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So it's much easier to do this when your business is a year old than it is when you're 10 years old. But this is such a pinnacle point of your operations, and it also has a direct implication to 5 of the 8 cultural elements that we're talking about today. So it's
Okay.
really got a huge impact. I've got this long bullet list here. This was only a few things that I came up with for benefits of this.
Wow.
And the benefits are so significant. This is
Yeah,
actually
and
what
these are so critical, right? Long-term
Mhm.
sustainability. If you're in it to win it, you've got to be thinking about these processes, these how they defining all of that really makes sense.
Yeah, it's super important. We tend to look at 5 key areas where there's a customer interface, quality. I'm probably going to forget what the 5 are. Financial. You always want to make sure you have good controls around your financial processes. So quality, safety, customer interaction. I always forget one, but there's usually 5 key areas that we really look at. I just am walking through this process with the client right now, and in about 4 or 5 of their specific processes in one, what we call process area, we have already seen tremendous duplication. And not only is that costly, but it's frustrating
Right.
to the customer as well. And it's frustrating for the employees.
To the employee, right? That's what I was
Yeah.
just gonna say. Yeah, for sure.
Which goes back to the role clarity.
Right. So important.
But there's really larger implications. So my first work right out of university, I actually was involved with a business, a medical startup, medical equipment startup. And the owner had a patented process that made his blood glucose meter that much more superior to any other product on the market. The engineers thought it was unnecessary to tell anyone else this information. And this was critical information that nobody else in the organization had. They just were like, it's engineering stuff. It's mathematical logarithms, and nobody's really going to understand it. But what they missed was it was crucial to marketing. It was crucial to sales. It was crucial to consumer
Right.
education. And by the time we figured out what was going on, that everyone had lost confidence in the product, the venture capitalists called in their funding, and guess what the CEO had to do? He had to sell his patent to pay back the venture capital.
Oh
So
no.
this is so key, so key. This is actually a large part of the work that I do in my business. I don't like doing it. I actually really hate it, but I know the value of it, and I know how important it is. I have also seen entire units completely lose all their proprietary material because somebody came in, started a business unit within the organization. They said, you know, our operations needs this business unit now. They hire somebody to come in, stand up the business unit, and a week later they're gone.
Right.
And where's any of the process? Where are the passwords? Where's the proprietary thing that we had? And so, oh, it's in your competitor's hands. So
yikes.
I could spend a lot more time talking about that, but we'll move on to the next one, which are team relationships. And, you know, I think that this is really something that has been kind of eradicated from our organizations overall, is this idea that relationships really matter. We see a lot of organizations who we've got this resurgence back to the scientific management approach of managing organizations. And again, that's another full several hour conversation about why I hate the scientific management approach so much. Bottom line is we proved 100 years ago that it didn't work. And yet we still see companies that have this high task, high productivity orientation, and they put that over the people. When we don't have good relationships, the team relationships are the foundation of trust and communication. And so when we don't have those things, we focus too heavily on the task. We don't get the time to have to build the relationships that make us connect, make us have that trust. I'm not going to throw you under the bus if I'm connected to you in some way, and I feel that I have a meaningful professional relationship with you. So
Right.
So the practical tip is really to build a few minutes into anything that you're doing. If it's your meetings, take the first 3 minutes and just do something fun as a way to connect personally, or even in your day-to-day routines. Give
Yeah.
folks that space and time to network with one another and connect and have those human connections. So a little more advanced tip, if you're already doing this, you've got this down, carve out some space with a couple chairs and maybe a table and some books or some puzzles or some fun way for your team members to walk away and find some different ways to interact. It's also very healthy for the brain. So if you want to get into trust and creativity, yeah, it's a little good brain space to take a break and do something else. Exercise a different side of your brain, right?
Right.
Okay. So the next one, we're going to continue with relationships, but this takes us into that broader space of the entire organization, as opposed to the micro environment of just the team. So if you've ever been around the water cooler and heard the phrase, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing around here, you know you don't have good organizational relationships or relations. And so these are key. These are the things that drive us into silos. And that's very often when we don't have good processes, we have lots of different functional silos. And again, we go back to that problem of, well, that's an accounting problem. It doesn't pertain to us, but it very likely can. And somebody needs to at least be asking the question, is this something that we should know about? So the practical tip is really, do not neglect the other teams in your organization. And again, if you want to have that more advanced tip, complete the end-to-end process maps of all your work. You'd probably be quite surprised at where those interdependencies lie and how folks may or may not be getting the information that they need to be doing their work. Also, shadowing is a really good way. If you want to have people shadow in other departments and go, wow, I had no idea that when I did this, it impacted you to this degree. So shadowing is another great way, yeah, to kind of begin to build up some of those relationships. Wish we had some visitors here for some questions, but if you've got questions about this, Charity's got this great YouTube channel set up, so feel free to ask your questions there, and we can get back to and answer them there.
Yeah, absolutely. And they could probably ask you direct questions as well. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, I've got my contact information at the end. So if anyone listening has any questions, feel free to email me at another point in time. So
Perfect.
Problem solving, we typically see problem solving or poor or a lack of problem solving when we don't have those good team or organizational relations. So this is where I talked about the employees closest to the work. They get frustrated when they're not asked for their consideration into a particular challenge or a task. We have this is work that was done by Dr. Peter Senge. So if anyone listening is familiar with the fifth discipline or Peter Senge's work, you'll know he has coined the phrase myth of management. And that means that there's this overwhelming, overarching myth that says, well, only the management can solve the problem. So now we get back into the frustration of, I came to you to do my best. I've got the expertise. I'm listening to the voice of the customer. I'm listening to the voice of even my internal customer. I've got an idea on how to solve this problem, but nobody's asking what I think about it. And so that's another way that's been shown through employee engagement to be very frustrating for employees. So make sure you're letting those that are closest to the work do the work. And that was a phrase coined by Dr. Gary Hamel, Leading the Revolution. Those closest to the work typically have the answers. So practical tip, invite folks in to give you that fresh perspective and walk away from this idea that only those with a management title can solve the problem for you, because they typically have been removed, right? You get into different roles, you're doing different work, you're examining different problems, and you may not be the one that is closest to that work anymore. And an advanced tip, complete those end-to-end process maps. I'm telling you, I love them. I hate the work, but they are so valuable. All right, we're getting close to the end here. I think this is number 7, passion and commitment. A lot of organizations talk a good talk when it comes to organizational values, and they'll go through a very perfunctory activity of maybe an hour identifying their values. And I would say, really take some time to dive into what your values are, because they probably are very aligned with the original founders, the original owners of the organization. And in the absence of values that drive passion and commitment, that create parts of culture, and these things are going to form on their own. It's just nature abhors a vacuum. So you'll have a culture. It might not be the culture that you want. And those overriding values may start to bubble up as well. So really spend the time to get clear about what those values are, and then live those values. These are not things that just go on a wall. Our values have to be lived. At the end of the day, it creates what's called affective commitment. And so there's affective, behavioral, and cognitive levels of commitment. The behavioral commitment is, I'm here because I can do the job. The cognitive commitment is, oh, it makes me think, I like the work. Affective commitment comes from the heart. And if our values are aligned with the organizational values, I'm going to have affective commitment, which means I have a much greater propensity to stay within the organization, because I'm committed to the values of the organization. So live those values. And, we oftentimes see that people become emotional. They may have emotional outbursts. They may even get labeled disruptive. We're seeing this in healthcare right now, where physicians get labeled as disruptive because their values are no longer aligned with the values of the organization, or they have experienced what we call moral injury, which is where someone is asking you to do something actively that's against your own values. So when you start to see people get anxious, frustrated, they're amped up, they're like, boy, what's gotten into that person? There's typically a values rub there. So this is where it's really good to have that relationship, so you can say, hey, what's going on? Really good to think about. So have your values identified, live them, and best practice is hire and promote for aligned values behavior. So we can build interview questions that are specific to your values, because behavioral based responses are past behavior is best indicator of future behavior. So build those values based questions, and then make sure you're promoting for behaviors that are aligned with those values. I think the biggest challenge that we see right now in management in organizations is that people are promoted for performance, not behavior. And I think that's a really disconcerting trend.
Interesting.
So yeah, values are pretty interesting. Okay, and then we have organizational knowledge and learning, and this is an area that's fascinating for me. I've spent a lot of my career time in this space of how understanding how organizations learn. And so organizational knowledge and learning is the ability to transfer knowledge from person to person. But it's not only the ability to do it, you have to have the willingness and the desire to do it, because we see knowledge as a base of power. And that ultimately can sink a ship, if you will. Or if you like my little crafty little picture that I've created.
Yeah.
I did this for a blog, actually, to kind of define the difference between what a healthy organization looks like when knowledge is freely shared, is this idea of kind of a healthy pond where you have this great ecosystem, versus the dead, dying, decayed swamp where all the fish are dead.
Right.
So we call this a knowledge schema. So think about a schema as an abstract cloud that kind of floats around the organization, and it's either white and fluffy and has happy little cherubs, and it floats around picking up new knowledge and sharing existing knowledge, and it gets bigger and bigger, more white and happy and fluffy in an organization that's committed to knowledge transfer and learning. Where you don't have that in an organization, you can see a couple things that start to emerge. If we stick with our little cloud, think of a little black tiny cloud that exists over individual people. And that's their way of hoarding that knowledge. So the knowledge cloud itself doesn't get any larger. It's just a shriveled up little black cloud that kind of follows individuals around. That's the best way I have to kind of describe it.
That's such a good way for, like, it's such a visual for me. I see it.
So we can have that happening with individuals. We can have that happening with teams or functional units. But the idea is that a great organization, a great culture means that we're freely sharing knowledge and having great knowledge transfer. So we have that happy, white, fluffy cloud of knowledge that we're freely sharing. So that's that organizational knowledge and learning. So those are the 8 elements of culture, and it's great culture that leads to retention. And it's also helpful with employee engagement. And employees you can't have employee engagement in the absence of a good culture. So good culture, employee engagement. You can probably have a few, right? Engaged employees, depending on the manager of the unit and the subculture that's been created within the organization. But you're going to have pockets of it, right? You're not going to have good engagement throughout the entire organization. And everyone thinks that, well, that's just good engagement, right? It's, you need the entire organization to be engaged. If you don't have a good engaged organization, you're definitely not going to get to this, the knowledge transfer, right? So, and practical tip here. I think people are really tired of the pizza party lunch and the picnic. Now, it's a little bit of an oxymoron as I state that, because I think that those things are really important and we have to have them, but those are not a direct line to employee engagement. If that makes sense. You got to have,
but they're not everything, basically.
You got to have, yes, you got to have the picnic to create the relationships. And the relationships create the trust and the communication and the camaraderie that we have within the organization. And that's one way to enhance employee engagement. But you can't say we have a disengaged workforce or our engagement scores are low, we're going to have a picnic. Gotcha. It's a little bit of a fine edge, but
picnic's not going to solve it all. That's for sure.
It's not going to solve it all. Yeah, but we do need to get back to those. We need to get back to those days when we had ways for our team members to have greater connection. So, my practical tip: what we say all the time: engage everyone every day through quality daily interactions. And our toolkit has 12 completely free strategies that you can use. So. Employee engagement does not have to be costly at all. In fact, it should be free. I always like to tell the CEOs when I'm working with them, your title should be Chief Engagement Officer, not Chief, what are they? Chief Executive Officer. Take the executive out and replace it with engagement, because your role is to be out and about, seen and visible, and making sure that people understand the power and the importance of all of these things.
Right, and they understand how their role has a direct impact, and what the fruit there is on that. So yeah,
100%, Charity. What is that direct impact that I am contributing? That's that passion, right, and commitment.
Right. So, I love it.
Why focus on retention? I hear this a lot. Well, I don't have to focus on retention because I still have money in my recruitment budget. Makes me want to scream.
Yeah, that's not a winning reason for sure.
It's really not. And we tend to think of the cost of turnover as well. It cost us this much to put the ad out, to do the recruiting, to look at the job description, to have the interviews, and it took 3 months to get them up to speed, right? So that's maybe their annual salary times 3 plus the operational cost or the sunk cost to get them in the door. It is so much more than that. It's really loss of knowledge. Sometimes 20, 30 years of knowledge that's just walked out of your organization, proprietary materials, perhaps, if there's sabotage that's going on, loss of relationships. That includes your customers. I put team and organization here, but that also does include your customers. There are customers who will follow a team member if they went to another organization. Happens a lot in sales. Loss of project momentum, trust, the cost to rebuild a team. So practical tip, culture really does matter. It's so much more than just having free coffee and donuts every Friday. It does take commitment. It takes commitment to behavior and consistency. And I had one more idea that I never finished. So you can say, and ... but it does take some commitment and time. It also, I think, requires us as leaders, as managers, to put aside any ego that you have and connect with your individuals. They really are, and that goes for us as employees, connecting with our managers as well, because we really are at an engagement and retention deficit right now.
It's true. Yeah, it's a nice way to sort of emphasize the importance of it in both directions, right?
Yeah, our managers.
It's not just the employee, the leader's responsibility. To some extent, the employee needs to also seek that kind of information and guidance out to make sure they understand what the values are, so they make sure that they know how things work, or what the processes are, those kinds of things, and how things are all related. So I've personally seen experiences where people were reporting to more than one person, or like having, and that just creates so much frustration for the individual who's struggling with not understanding, the priorities that are competing, and how maybe even the directives that they're being given from two different people might be totally different on the same situation. So
yeah. It's a huge problem. But we're seeing for the first time ever, since we started, I should qualify whatever is, since we started measuring engagement, which is about 30 years, we're really starting to see managers have lower engagement scores. This year was the first time we've ever seen managers. So, to our employees, leadership is not a title. It's how you behave. It's how you show up. And you have the opportunity to connect with your managers as well and make sure they're doing all right. Because I think they're really struggling right now.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So there we have it. The 8 ways to help are the 8 things of culture. And culture is really all about making sure that you've got the right folks. And I'll just leave on this note, if you do not have a good culture, employees talk and word gets around in the community, and you will not be able to attract top talent if you do not have a good culture. And I'm working with a client right now, and I've been working with them for about 1.5 years, and they're seeing now on Glassdoor that employees, our future, past, previous, current employees are saying, do not apply here unless you're willing to put forth the effort, because this is a culture that demands excellence, and you will not fit in if you cannot live up to this idea of excellence within their culture. So yay to them, because that really makes a difference. And it says you're only going to attract great people because great people want to be surrounded by excellence and they want to contribute to excellence.
Right. It just, at least it'll ward off the people you don't want to have as a part of your organization as well. So that's great.
Exactly. Yeah, truly.
Love it.
And they will come. If you don't have the great culture, the top talent will not.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So
well, thank you
so
much for taking us through all of this. I feel like that's something that organizations of all sizes can take away at all levels, whether you have a human resources department or not, whether you're an operation of, one person who's kind of trying to think about maybe taking the next steps and laying the foundation, and just understanding that it's a good time to define what your values are, define what all of these things mean, start to put together your processes, your processes documentation, so that when you do start to grow, you are in a solid foundation for that growth, and ensuring that you do retain the good talent that you initially attract. So thank you so much. This has been super
100%.
helpful.
You're very welcome. Thanks for letting me sit behind the driver's seat today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And thank you for being an important part of the Chamber Collective as a member of our board of directors. We so appreciate your contributions and the contributions that you've given our Women's Success series, and just want to thank you for all of that. So really appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. And likewise to you. You've done a great effort in growing our chamber. So
Perfect.
what do we got next? What do we got next month, Charity?
We've got loads of fun events. We've just added a new one, our business mastermind roundtable discussion, which will be a lot of fun. So make sure you check out our website at thechambercollective.com and find our events tab just to find out what's happening. There's always something good going on with the chamber. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for the Chamber Collective. I'm Danielle Lord, and we'll see you next month with our Zooming into Success series. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.